Welcome to Pull, Push, Shove, a podcast series celebrating 50 years of Scarborough Group International. I'm your host, Nick Matthew. Pull, push, shove. It's more than a phrase, it's a way of working, a way of leading, and a way of making decisions. In this series, we explore the moments, the relationships, and the pressures that shape that mindset and the people who lived it. Kevin and Simon McCabe, along with Dave Bassett, join me to explore what sport teaches about leadership, resilience, and pushing forward when standing still isn't an option. Dave, I've got to come to you first. You're our esteemed guest today. 7 promotions in your career, including 2 with Sheffield United, part of a select managerial group over 1,000 matches. You could start us off. And we could probably talk for the whole episode about this, but what are the biggest learnings over such an amazing career as a football manager?
Well, you learn on the job to some extent. At Wimbledon, it was run a tight boat, and I was really running the whole club. You know, signing the players, buying and selling players or releasing players, and at the same time being responsible for the whole football side, which the managers don't do now because obviously things have moved on. It's a big business with investors from all over the world who don't understand football, but they understand that if you can make it big, you can then turn it over and sell it for millions more. So it's a business. Sometimes these people running the clubs, it's not for the football love of it, but that's the reality is that, and they want business and they turn it over. And this is why so many managers get sacked now, because it's easier to sack the manager and pay him off. You know, in the Premier League, it can be, 5, 10, 15, 20 million quid rather than trying to get the players. But the problem is that the players know that this is the case, that they don't suffer in terms because their contracts can't be touched, and they get on with the game, and the new manager comes in and they accept that. So the manager has lost a lot of power, really, and they've been now turn it to head coaches, and they've got people, and the amount of people working in all the clubs now with staff and everything else. A lot of these sort of directors and sporting directors are ex-managers who are earning a living, doing recruitment, which is totally alien to me, because if the manager don't want a player, why is somebody else going to pick it for you? The manager's got to have the final say.
Well, we do, Dave. We manage a company, but our principal job is managing real estate projects, and all of the management aspects go into that can sometimes mirror sport, because we are managing a team of people, a team of design team members, on-site management of the workforce and the operatives on site. But in terms of your sporting experience, football's very much whilst it's a team game, it's very much full of individuals. So where have the difficulties been for you as a manager, and taking your previous business experience and the experiences at Wimbledon and other clubs, where are your real difficulties in terms of managerial decisions that you had to make, be it upwards or be it to your first team squad?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like anything. If you're building a team, you've got to take time. You can't just sign a couple of players and it changed. Because when I first went to Sheffield United, they were down the bottom and everything else, and there were players there at that time. Peter Beager, his contract was running, and he knew that he could go to Stoke City or other clubs. There were a team of people like Peter Widd, Andy Leeming, and that were older players that weren't, up to the standard as requirements. So luckily, a lot of those contracts were coming out, and you could then bring in new people, which was fortunate, which was what I wanted to do, and successfully I managed to do my recruitment well to bring them in. When I was at Wimbledon, I was answerable, and Sam trusted me because he was in Lebanon or wherever it was doing his business. I did a brilliant job for him in that time, taking them up to where they were. And I didn't get appreciated or paid by him. I didn't really want to leave Wimbledon, but I'd reached a stage where, we finished 6th in the top league, got to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, and he was then coming in with this nonsense about he could pick the team. I had to take that because he's got the responsibility of the club. The manager might be not working. So you make mistakes, but you try and learn by mistakes. And when you take over a club at the right time, it can be great, but then a lot of times it's not right. And you've been brought in because the team hasn't been successful for various reasons. So why do they necessarily, boards of directors think all of a sudden, and even the fans, that you're going to turn these players who haven't been doing it? Why have you got a magic wand? You're not. You've got to weed out, and that takes time. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of time now. It seems to be that managers and coaches are dispensable.
The fascinating thing for me was that Dave was never a manager under your stewardship at any point.
What I'm looking at Dave alongside me, when we spoke before, I told you about the people I admired who were part of my mentors. He's not a mentor to me. He's a hero. As a true football supporter, I remember once Zooming, I think with Simon or Scott, to watch the Blades play Oldham. Plastic pitch, with the first team that had beaten them on this plastic pitch. They were second to us or first.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Dino scored 2 goals.
We drove like an idiot to get to Oldham with his nibs, and we saw the team win 2-0. Brian Dean scored them both because he knew how to play the game with them on their plastic surface. And I remember sort of being at home. We were playing Burnley. It's such an important game not to lose, because it's that last 2 or 3 games, and listening to it, not missing it anything, and cheering, shouting like a bloody idiot. There's only me in the house listening to it, the crackly old radio. We won by a whisker, and Hull drew or something or lost, and that meant we were getting promoted again. And this guy Dave Bassett, who was a hero, knew what he was doing. So created a different sort of enthusiasm, dynamism of Sheffield United Football Club, the club, as well, of course, as the team. He was so admired by many. And I'd not sort of witnessed that before. The managers I'd known, but not very well, they didn't carry the ingredients that this young fella had of making it happen. We're going to all of a sudden get going again and be a success. And that's what he brought at all the levels, from getting out of the equivalent of League One into effectively second division up to playing in what became Premier League.
I mean, Dave going Sheffield United was the start of my real football's journey as a youngster. And Dave's team was full of my heroes. And they always say you should never meet your heroes. But I've been lucky. I met the heroes and not been disappointed, because Dave's there. Dino, Brian Dean, who's become a
friend.
Tony Garner, the friend. And Glyn Hodges, he could make
Billy Whitehurst.
He's a hero for different reasons.
Brilliant player to come to give you that extra icing on the cake to get promoted. And obviously, purely Dave's desire to bring him on board to do half a dozen games that were critical.
Dave, you left Sheffield United in 95. Kevin, you became the chairman in 99. So I'm fascinated to hear about how that relationship developed over the years between the two of you.
I think it's a good question. I mean, I'd find it difficult to name the day or the week or the month. Dave would. And maybe it was meeting him via you, Simon. Don't know.
I can't remember how you both met, actually.
Well, Kevin used to come. I remember Kevin towards the end was always in the director's box, and I spoke to him. Yeah. And I remember Kevin, Simon and Scott and the younger ones being there, and Kevin was sort of somewhere. You're thinking, well, he's probably going to end up on the board here, and we needed this and that, because at the end, Paul Woolhouse had absconded abroad. Reg Brearley was just interested in selling it to anybody. This guy McDonald was coming in from Manchester, Man City supporter, and he obviously didn't want me as manager. All of a sudden the other clubs were building, their boards were stronger and everything else, and McDonald come along, and Reg decided that that was the way forward, and he was going to have me out. I know that. So it came to an end. I didn't. I mean, as I say, I stayed at Sheffield United longer than I should have done. I should have moved on. I had some good offers.
I'm interested to know, and Simon, you could maybe chime in here, being the current CEO of Scarborough Group International. What is the best structure of a football club, and how does that relate to the structure of a business?
In any business, whether it's real estate, whether it's football, you need to put people in places who you've got 110% belief can deliver what they're expected to deliver. I use the expression, I like to sort of surround ourselves with people that make stuff happen, achieve things, make things happen. Kevin's expression of, pull, push and shove, people who have got that right instinct, right desire, right passion to make things happen and pull, push and shove every day. And I think sport and managing a football team or managing a real estate business, there's a lot of comparables and similarities there. I think a big sort of thing I've learned from having a business career, and obviously the business overflowing into ownership, Dad's ownership of Sheffield United, is trust. I think there needs to be a lot of trust with the people and the colleagues that you're working with on a day-to-day basis. And I learn, in football, the good and bad of trust, which you wouldn't necessarily see in a real estate business. Whilst people come and go who might work for the business, when they join the business, they're all trying to achieve the same aim. Football business, I learned, is slightly different. There's people who would stab you in the back, if that's the right expression to use, or ignore relationships for their own personal greed, in my experience. And that was a learning curve that I learned much later in my career and much more recently in my career, that I think it probably is an industry where people look out for themselves too much. But yeah, I mean, in terms of similarities, passion, desire to succeed, desire to do well, make stuff happen. And just chatting to Dave, he's got that in abundance, and Kevin's got that in abundance. And we as a group, the culture flows from the top. So Kevin's pull, push and shove attitude, up and about from 6 a.m. every morning actually filters down. That's very important. And that culture of key management filters down into the rest of the management, and it becomes contagious.
Kevin, you described Dave as an example of a 24/7 manager who could rebuild a team and equip it for challenges ahead. Again, in the modern era, is that a thing of the past now?
Oh, it's certainly changed, and Dave can comment more than myself on it, but most certainly looking at it from the outside, because I was a supporter at the time, what this man was doing to Sheffield United, which had become a dump of a club, what he had, the board of Sheffield United then, the part of the board had joined, was, let me say, old gentlemen. They were not bad people. Derek or Alan Davies' world, they were there for the position of being a director of a football club, and they were there because they had a position in Sheffield as a big city club. He ran it. That's the real key. Yes, it got people working alongside who were concentrating on the commercial side, like Andy Dakin.
Yeah.
When David was with us, and we got better and better as a solid team, not great in terms of the expertise of the people running the day-to-day football business, not the football club, we lost it. In Mike McDonald, good guy who as he may have been in some respect, he brought his own board members. One or two of the names I've forgotten. Bear in mind, this was when I was joining the board myself, who weren't really interested in Sheffield United. They were interested in success. The club lost, in my early days as a director, it lost its warmth, its family club. It lost the spirit of working on the field to be successful, and off the field, it was a disaster.
I mean, he was clueless. He was aggressive and everything else. I mean, I remember we walked down the tunnel and I was with John Greaves, the kit man, and everything else. He said, "We've got to be successful. This club's got to win and everything else. If it doesn't," he said, "otherwise I'm going to turn this into a potato field and grow potatoes and sell them."
He said
and
it
he thought, what a dickhead,
He did, seriously.
Ultimately, football is a results business, isn't it, Simon? You said our property is a people business. Football's a results business, isn't it? I would imagine it's very difficult for the two things to work side by side in perfect unison there.
Well, when Dad was involved in the club, we looked at it slightly differently. Obviously, football is key and a massive element, and success on the pitch is what everyone's striving for. But people forget. People look at football, come just see a pitch. And actually, that's nonsense. You should look at a football club as a variety of small independent businesses, if that's the best way to describe it, whether it's the commercial business, for sponsorship and the like, ticketing business, an events business, conferencing, banqueting facilities that you have, a hotel in our case, running an academy. So there's 5, 6, 7 different different businesses within the structure of a football club, and in particular in the modern game, where football is one of those businesses and the key business in terms of its, because that's what everyone looks at, but behind the scenes and what often people use the expression off the field, if all of the other parts aren't working, you mentioned Andy Dakin, who was at the time great for Sheffield United as commercial director. If the commercial division's not working, or the comms and banqueting facilities aren't fully to capacity and busy, or the events team aren't busy, you can have a very unstable ship off the field. And maybe Dave can mention off the field problems, whether they're at board level or just problems with the culture of the club and happiness of the people who are working day to day, can have effect on the first team football and vice versa.
After Reg disappeared and we had Mike McDonald, the major shareholder in Sheffield United, it went downwards. Sure, the first season we had some success. We're unfortunate to losing the playoff final against Crystal Palace, but the club was in disarray. There's not the Sheffield United theme of friendly people being around. There were too many people from Manchester area who were on the board who didn't understand Sheffield people. Because if you look at football clubs, they all differ somewhat because of maybe when you get very big, it's similar, but you have to create a team, a club to suit your supporters. I remained on the board, but at the time I also went to live and work in Brussels, built a major corporation in Brussels, and that was a hollow period. What I'd also got, friends though they may be, is directors who weren't up to it. People who were good supporters, put a few bob in, but they didn't understand the football club. I looked back and thought, I need somebody to actually take over running the football side of the football club. That's where the guy next to me I missed out on. I'd got to know Dave, not as well as I do now, and he's the guy that could have fixed the club quite easily.
As manager again, or as director of
well,
football?
You get all these titles,
but
not coach, manager, and
you'd either be the manager, you're done. I mean, I said to Kevin, I always remember when I sort of left, later, I could have done with you coming in. I mean, the real time was when we got to there and the Premier League was starting. Reg Brearley and the board didn't understand where the Premier League was going. Alan Laver was still moaning about my phone bill and that at that time. I mean, so you needed people now, and they needed investment.
And that was a challenge for you living in Belgium, Kevin. Trying to find that right chief executive to sort of lead from the front and carry on the good work that undoubtedly you'd have been more hands-on yourself had you been living more locally.
If I'd have chosen correctly and I didn't choose correctly, and that's why I say getting to the absolute football side, because he's a good salesman as well, because he's naturally ebullient and talking to people. And that's where, I could have got hold of him, talked to him, and maybe sorted out things without him becoming the big boss, but I didn't. I left it because I was travelling a lot, first interviews, my colleagues on the board would see whoever, and they want to say they've not a clue. I do mean it.
Well, you said as a chairman, Dave touched upon this as well, how you've got to adapt to the manager rather than the other way around.
Absolutely, yeah. You've got to choose your manager, and it's really his background, his free reign to actually decide how the team were going to play, what was wanted, fullbacks or whatever.
And how does that relate to business? Because maybe would that be the other way around, where you're trying to get somebody in a leadership role who fits with the ethos of the company, perhaps, or are the similarities there?
I think the similarities. I think we're constantly adapting, and as business is evolving, in particular real estate business, with much more regulatory authorities involved in what we do day to day. You have to adapt to that, and you have to adapt to individuals that work for you.
But normal companies, taking away the football club, normal companies still run differently, company to company, even though you may be in the same sort of business of, whether it's of retailing or whatever. And football's no different. What you've really got to get on board, which is difficult, is someone who understands, and certainly understands, the club that they're going to join.
Business has been interested in having people who have been successful in football. I've done some motivation speeches and everything else, and Alec Ferguson can go and do these. But also, football brings in people from business. They bring in necessary. They don't, if they're looking for a chief executive, they don't necessarily think, I'll try and get him from that football club like a manager. They go out and find out who's the chief exec at BT or, Barrett Homes or whatever it is, to bring them in because they got it. And both businesses are intertwined, that they can learn from one another.
In terms of the sort of post-COVID era of the business world, we are starting to see, and you mentioned you going into business, do motivational speeches. Some of the other corporates have psychologists coming in to speak
that's right.
to workforces and what have you to motivate them differently. You don't get the credit that you deserve for probably, I'm guessing, in the 80s, appointing sports psychologists to work with you. When nobody else did it, you were very forward thinking.
With Wimbledon, we were cutting up videos. We managed to film some of our own games. We had a police camera or whatever it is we managed to get. We would cut that up and show the players. We had a data guy, a guy called Neil Lanham, who came to the games, and he was logging how many crosses we got in the game, how many free kicks did we get, how many corners did we get, where did we lose the ball, how many regains did we get. When I come to Sheffield United, I brought the video with that, and it was as I say, it was revolutionary.
How the percentages, isn't it?
Yeah. And at Arsenal then started to videoing, and that we were showing in the Midland back four how they were playing and how they were squeezing, all this type of thing. But also we had a sports science guy who was doing our weights, and the players were going to see him separately to do that. We had Jocelyn Hoyt-Smith come down and do some movements and everything else. It was just that I was thinking, that this is the way forward. Other people advise you and think, do this. It's not all Dave Bassett's ideas or whatever it may be at all. But the thing was, video evidence could show you what it led, and then lots of people come. But it's like business. If it changes direction at sometimes, or there's new rules and regulations coming, you've got to be able to circumvent them and come up with a way to be successful.
So, innovation. How is Scarborough Group currently innovating, would you say, to stay ahead of the game?
From a practical buildings perspective, a lot of it is the innovation's already baked into projects. Where it's probably adapting is more AI and the impact that AI might have on the industry in terms of delivering buildings, what impact AI might have in terms of the type of buildings that we need to create. There may be changes to specifications and the like. So that's evolving. But in terms of real estate, whilst it's an old-fashioned industry, building has become very much modernised now, and a lot more buildings efficiency.
Yeah, what you can say, we are reconsidering, what we're doing and what we want to do. We reckon that we've got a poor government, where with a chancellor that's actually snatching things away from good companies, particularly on the development side. So as a group, we have to think what's the right thing to concentrate on, and you've maybe got to change the route you were taking 6 months ago, because of political issues and the like.
The other thing that struck me as well as a football club owner, a manager, especially in the Premier League era, and relating that to business, is the level of scrutiny, how you can perform under that. I was fortunate in some ways, not so fortunate in others, to play a sport where the level of scrutiny wasn't that high. Mm-hmm. How do you perform in the Premier League era? It's gone through the roof, right? In the scrutiny now to maintain those standards and the pressure that can lead to. Both, sure, you first to answer that one. It's a bit of a one that all three of you could.
Well, Dave's probably best, but the thing I find bizarrest about Premier League football, when they're walking off at full time or half time, they all cover their mouth because Sky Sports employ lip readers, and you think, what? Who cares what they say?
I mean, that's incredible.
I mean, that is the level of scrutiny gone way too far.
Or the length of time a team manager has to spend with the media.
How would you get on with that many interviews, Dave?
Well, there used to be quite a few, but a lot of the questions I find inane, why and boring. I mean, you've obviously, you must be pleased you've just won. Yeah, well, of course we're pleased. The Sky and all the programmes, they're looking for news and everything else, and they're picking up anything that somebody says or whatever it is, and that's the way of the world. That social media, everything else, it's all taken out of proportion.
Kevin, how does the scrutiny of being a football club chairman compare with being the chairman of Scarborough Group?
We're celebrating 50 years. I think, cripes, 50 years. And therefore, to keep a company going, and pretty much you may have the ups and downs because of like the problems of Brexit and whatever. And as we've got today with the politicians who are coming forward with proposals which are affecting so many businesses, and we're one of them, in real estate. So you've got to be as skillful as a good centre forward to decide which way you're going to go to ensure that at least you're still in business. The benefits of being the owner of a football club like Sheffield United got me an awful lot of business without asking. In other words, I became known better in the world of real estate because also having my feet into football. Yeah. So whether that's in the UK or whether it's within sort of Far East or certainly throughout Europe.
It opened doors internationally, didn't it?
And it still does to a degree. When a lot of people come to talk to me about maybe a real estate, but it's half an hour of talking football.
Like we've said today.
Like you see, you've learnt an awful lot from me.
100%. Simon, we met through squash, actually, because it's the other side of sport, isn't it? And exercise, I guess, is just that feeling, the endorphins, those routines, those habits, obviously, that you can directly apply. Sport is just part of your lifestyle as well, isn't it? As well as linked to the business.
Well, I just think, I mean, I love sport. I love everything, whether it's from a mental health perspective or whether it's just,
entertainment.
The health
Thank
body.
God you've got sport for the UK.
It's sport, whether you're spectating or trying to participate yourself and keep fit yourself at squash, and squash is big to the family as well as football. It's key. I just think if you've got a healthy mind, a healthy body, other things do happen naturally.
Kevin, how's the family's love of sport influenced some of your key business projects? I know, obviously, I'm thinking the Steel City Stadium, for example, how you extended the rugby club at Scarborough to add on all the new racket facilities that it does, and other projects as well that no doubt you've been involved in over the years.
I suppose it's just been giving back, as a working class kid, as a youngster, with the family was a poor family, but I still was playing sport, kicking a ball on an old wreck because Bramall had been badly damaged in the Second World War. Sport generally, football and cricket in particular, were big parts of my father's life as he passed on to his son, that you passed on to your own children, and you can see its importance. Why? Well, you're learning how to mix with other people at playing sport. You're learning how to compete. You're learning how to accept failure at times rather than success. All ingredients that go into running businesses day by day.
Yeah.
And what we're saying to you last when we were talking earlier on, even an old git like myself did spend time from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. at playing squash with Litlands, I may say, to bring money in to the veterans of the army.
Sport brings people together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the projects you referred to there, and giving something back with the Scarborough Group Foundation, our charitable arm, extending the Scarborough Rugby Club facilities with additional and new squash courts and paddle tennis courts to give back to the community, effectively, to use. Gets those who normally wouldn't have ever seen a squash court playing squash, playing sport, doing things. And
in
it
fact,
does bring people together.
Sport, yeah, I think we all agree with that. Whether it's for the girls or guys. I mean, to say a youngster of ours, Florence, and you're seeing a natural one with a sort of way she approaches playing tennis now. You can see a young lady there that's going to be a proper sports one.
How long is it until she beats you, Simon?
Oh, she
I mean,
will
that's
be
not
already
taking
beat me
long.
at tennis. And the way my paddle tennis is at the moment, she'll definitely beat me. I'm awful at paddle tennis at this present time.
Always try and finish off episodes with a bit of a let's say quick fire round. It's a bit cheesy, isn't it? But so just one thing, some lessons. So I'll start with you, Dave. What's the hardest lesson sport has taught you over your career?
To take the success and enjoy it, because you'll get brickbats and you'll lose, and then you've got to recover. You've got a disaster. For example, I did fantastic at Wimbledon and everything else. I go to Watford, it turns out to be a disaster, a bad move. I come to Sheffield United, they get relegated at the end of the season. Watford got relegated, so from the first season at Wimbledon, I was King Kong. A year later, I'm associated with 2 relegations, and you've got to pick yourself up. And then coming to Sheffield United was starting all over again to build a team and determine. So you've got to show that determination and enthusiasm to believe in yourself.
Kevin, same question. Hardest lesson that sports taught you?
I suppose it is dealing with professional sport is where you've got to be so careful. In professional sport like football, where in the period I've been involved in, ownership has gone from that to that. In other words, it becomes ever more serious because you're spending so much more money all the time, and it so often depends upon. In football's a good example. Lady luck, it hits someone's ass and goes in for a goal that wins you a match. Or with VAR at the minute, you win games because of what you think are bad decisions taken by VAR. Never mind referees, but that still is. It comes to it's still a game, isn't it?
Simon, for you, what's one non-negotiable that you would refuse to flex on, even a little bit, in business leadership?
That's a difficult question. Because actually, going back to what we were saying earlier, you've always got to sort of adapt to a situation, a circumstance in front of you. I'm not that blinkered to have that attitude, actually. So I think you've got to be quite open to the situation in front of you. So I wouldn't instill that, to be honest.
Great answer. Dave, you must have had some characters in the dressing rooms that you've been in over the years, from the early days, the crazy gang through. Where's that leadership lie with you? Is that like a non-negotiable that you would want in any dressing room that you went into? Do you need those leaders in there, or does that stem from you as manager?
Well, the manager's got to lead, but you want leaders in the dressing room. Some clubs had at Wimbledon. I was lucky to have a lot of leaders who bought into what I wanted to do, and I brought them to a promised land they never thought, because they were playing in the 4th division, and to play in the top division against Manchester United, for some of them, they were like 18, 19, 17, 20. Within 4 years, they were playing the teams there, and they believed the way we were playing, and they built a structure that if anybody came in and wasn't doing their jobs, that I had it at the time, and even in Sheffield United on occasions we did exactly the same. When I built them in the way we're going to play, and we got promoted, and then we got promoted again, which is double promotion. And then, they actually believed it took a little while, but to survive in the Premier League, or it wasn't the Premier League, the 1st division, that first season was very important. The first season's the hardest. The second comes a little bit easier as well. So you've got to have the characters that talk. I mean, there were certain times where at Wimbledon at the end and at Sheffield United, I didn't necessarily go in the dressing room straight away after game. I'd let the players sort one another out, because they'd got that to that point where they'd insult one another, or have a go of them for not doing this. They'd be arguing. So I leave them alone and then come in the points out. And again, just treating people. Brian Dean, I had to treat Brian in a different way to what I could speak Vinnie Jones. I could say stuff to Vinnie and to Wally Downs and Glyn Hodges, various things that I wouldn't have said to some of the Sheffield United players. and that. So you've got to know your characters.
So adaptability, innovation,
Yeah.
leadership, all.
Yeah, you've got to
crossovers.
you've got to work with the players. You've got to look at them and say, well, what have I got? What are these players good at? You know, and what do they achieve? If I'm asking them to do wrong things, it's not going to help them. They're going to lose confidence, and the dressing room will lose confidence.
Yeah, look, the similarities are endless there. I think you know, you build it. Even for me, an individual sport, you build in a team of around you of strengths in different areas.
But why are you Wednesday-eyed? Why are you Wednesday-eyed?
We always try to not mention that every episode.
When you're involved in sport, you know, Dave knows better than anybody, you know, you need that discipline. You need that real determination to succeed. Business is no different. You need the same attributes to succeed in business.
Yeah, but in all sorts of ways. Obviously on the fitness side, playing football, squash or whatever. But when you think how many sports the UK have been responsible for, whether it's tennis, whether it's golf, rugby, league, union, you think about it and thank goodness we've got sport. I think it's one thing that makes our nation still respectable. Yeah?
Yeah, we don't win at any of them, do we, unfortunately?
Well, we do really, don't we? I mean, we've not only got top people playing whether it's a World Cup football or European football or cricket. Yeah, it is sport. It keeps us together. But thank God.